Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav and today I have a special guest in the studio, Jeanne Comeau. Jeanne, it's wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Wonderful to be here, Einav, with you and to meet you today. I was so looking forward to meeting you, even coming through on your website. You're just such a bright light in the healing community, and I thank you for all that you're doing out there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words. And I'm really excited about this conversation. I mentioned earlier I was listening to another podcast that you did recently, and I was like, yes. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So I'm very excited to have our own conversation today. But before we get on with the conversation, I want to read a little bit of what you wrote so that everyone is on the same page. So, so Jeanne Comeau is a metaphysical counselor and astrology-infused coach who helps people understand their inner wiring through the birth charts and personal strengths. Her work turns complex spiritual and astrological ideas into clear, grounded guidance so clients can see themselves with more compassion and begin to create lives that finally feel like a fit. After years of feeling like the embarrassed keeper of endless dreams and missed goals,
It's true.
she realized she was trying to live a story that didn't match her deeper wiring. Now she collaborates seamlessly with other healing modalities by offering an astrological lens on chronic struggles, helping clients translate their charts into practical insight and gentle, soul-aligned next steps that support their existing healing journeys. Wow.
Thank you.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a while to morph out. It's written on my website, but to share with the audience, I'm a corporate technology professional, so spent some 35 years in software development and left that to morph into what I'm doing today, which was always following alongside me, a separate track. And when I decided to exit corporate 2 years ago, last month, it was a full 2 years, wasn't sure what I was going to do. But within a week, things started coming forward, sort of falling. And the synchronicity came forward that started to lay the breadcrumbs that have become what I do today, my mission, my work. And I get to meet wonderful people like you and some other hosts that I've met. I could never have foreseen this life that I'm living now back then when I was in the corporate office and wondering what next. So
I think this is so interesting that that you're mentioning it, because it's exactly what I feel is the challenge that so many people are going through at the moment. It's that thing of there is a little bit more opening to understanding life journey and purpose and what are we doing here. Also, the feeling that I'm not doing so well. Maybe I'm doing the same thing again, but I'm not feeling as fulfilled as I was before. So,
right.
so I feel that people are starting to have conversations about not really liking where they're at, but also really don't know or not knowing how to move forward in a way that is in alignment and really.
Right. It's so cool that you said that, because it's that inner, all of a sudden we feel uncomfortable where we are. What used to satisfy us and make us happy, I was living the routine and I was liking it. All of a sudden we start to feel that it's not enough. And that's when the inklings are coming, that there's something more. Something more is going to come. So for our listeners, if you're feeling that there's something more, you're feeling a little itchy, you've got to have a change, what is next? That means that the seeds are being planted in your subconscious, that there's going to be a change. You don't know what the change is yet, but it's like the drum is beating softly and it will get louder and it will get louder to the point where if you resist it, it's going to get really loud and it's going to force change. But change is coming because life is full of changes. Life truly is. And when we embrace them, it's a whole new adventure. So I loved how you said that. It was that inner inkling. I had to move on, but I didn't know what. But it all unfolded.
Yeah. But this is the thing, right? Because a lot of the people that I see, they would say, okay, maybe I'm in a job and I'm not really liking it. Let me find the same job somewhere else. and basically really staying on the same kind of level. And what you're describing, and I think I did the same thing with my corporate career, was to really say that's not it anymore. It really is not.
Right.
It's not no longer the direction. I wasn't put on this earth to argue with project managers and budget
you lived my life. You lived my world, right? I would always say I wasn't put on God's green earth to do this.
Right, exactly. So, but you like you say, right? You already had something there to say to you, hey, that maybe that's more calling me. And,
Yes.
and one thing that I really want to explore is really how do we help people to really see that there might be more than just going to do more of the same of what they've already done, and how to find or discover this other potential of something that they could lean into.
Well, that's a very deep and great question. Let's all go there, right? Life happens in stages, as we know. The younger, the teens, the 20s, up to 30, we're in a phase of life where we're still, in our 20s, we're still dreaming about who we're going to be. We're starting to build our careers, and so there's an energy about that. And then we come into our 30s. We have, in astrology speak, we have our first Saturn return at 29 years old. We come into our 30s, and it's time to settle down. We see a lot of people settling down at 29, 30, 31. And the dreams of our youth, we come to terms with the dreams of our youth. Well, we're not going to be, or we are going to be, or we get more serious about making it be. At any rate, that's a major chapter change in life, 29, 30, 31. Then we go through the 40s into the 50s, folks. Yes, you go there. If you're not there yet, we went there. You go there. And it's about the building. It's about being in the routine. It's about having the family. It's about getting the home. It's about getting the things and keeping up with what the world tells us on an external level we need to have to be happy. I will tell everybody here, and those that are in their 60s and 70s, they've already discovered this. It starts to happen in the 50s. The things that you wanted hold less importance. The building, you're tired of the building. It's no longer really important to build so much so that you can be at the top of the mountain. And we start to come in tune with our spirituality. Not religion from a dogmatic perspective, but our inner spirituality, our inner soul. And we start looking for more. And so, it happens in chapters. That's the first thing to point out. So when someone is seeking to know why, what more, it depends on what phase of life they're in. And this is how I approach my evolutionary astrology work with my client. And so we can look at it a couple of ways. What makes you content and happy? What keeps you in the zone? And I like to ask folks, well, what do you like to do on Saturday afternoon when no one is telling you that they need you to do something else or you need to be somewhere? What is it, the thing that you like to do? That's a number one clue as to what is going to bring you the ultimate joy in your lifetime, is what do you like to do in your spare time? Then, of course, there's many ways to assess our gifts and our talents, which we can dive into that enough, right? And when we're trying to discover what's next, we have to understand the phase of life, and we have to be still. We have to be quiet. We have to listen. And we have to explore. So for example, you're not wondering what's next and you see a magazine or, a newspaper, local community college is having some courses, and you say, oh, I think I like that. I think that would be interesting. That's a clue. You go. You start exploring the things that you like to do, that you're called to do. And then therefore what is to come next as a life chapter will start to unfold. And that's really what I did too, and probably you did as well, Einav. I mean, I'm looking at that lovely book of, library behind you. You were always searching, and you were doing that while you were in the corporate job. So it's that second part of life that we're all living that I think as we get into our 50s and 60s starts to become more prevalent.
So are we saying that really everyone, these phases are everyone going through them? There is
Everybody
no...
goes through these phases. Everybody goes through these phases of life. We can think about it astrologically, but let's just give it a think. We know what our 20s was like. We were still in tune with the dreams of our teens and our youth, and we were still looking to build the reality around those dreams. Mm-hmm. Then we got to our late 20s and our early 30s, and a wake-up call. Reality sets in. Well, got to pay the rent, got to make a living, going to have a family. What of those dreams can I take forward and now make a life with? A life that is. So that's a phase of life. It happens at that first Saturn return. Then through the 30s and the 40s, all the way up to that second Saturn return at 59 is the building. It's really the building. And then we come into the third act, the third part of life, which is getting closer to the divine. Getting closer to the divine and figuring out how we are each going to serve others, because ultimately we're all here to serve. And so we certainly see a lot of volunteerism that comes in the 50s and the 60s and later on in life, because everybody is looking to serve, because ultimately we know we're all one. We get to that point when we ease off from the building. And in that, there's other phases to Einav, which I can see in astrology, which it gets technical, so I don't want to go there, but there's various phases of, cycles of spirituality, cycles of individuation. The early 40s, big moment, it's the Uranus opposition, we call it. And this is when you as the individual really seeks to come forth in the early 40s and burst into what you're going to do in that third chapter of your life, not half.
So I guess it's really interesting when people come and talk with you, and you can look at their charts and you can really see the phases that they've already been through, and maybe some life events that happen, and really can make sense of
it's beautiful. What I can see. So evolutionary astrology is a branch of astrology different than character-based astrology, and it is certainly not prediction astrology, because I don't do predictions. It's a branch of astrology that asks a very unique question, which is, why do I have the chart I have? Evolutionary astrology is soul-level astrology. It's spiritual astrology. And the premise of it is that we live multiple lifetimes, that the soul evolves through every lifetime. And the soul comes in at a specific moment and place into a specific family for the evolution of the soul in the current lifetime. In the birth chart, the evolutionary astrologer can see what the energies were, and we feel energy through emotion. What are the energies that I was born with? What is the weather that I will be, sort of like, what's the storm that I will encounter throughout my lifetime? How do I dress for that storm? You see? And so we understand the individual from that perspective. We can look at the past life energy that came in. The one thing that transcends death and rebirth is emotions. And we see that through a positioning called the South Node. South Node, past, North Node, where you are to go. And the soul is always, if we think of all of us, there's a need and a striving to grow and evolve at all times. It's not a mental thing. It's a soul-driven need, because the soul is seeking to develop through this lifetime to move on to another lifetime, eventual transcendence. It's interesting, when we get there, then there's nothing left to do. So the soul just goes off somewhere or comes back as an ascended master, right? And so in evolutionary astrology, we can see the past energy, we can see where the soul is trying to move towards, and we can see what the what the energies are that bring harmony towards that growth, and what the energies are that bring friction and opposition towards that growth. These are the things that are always happening to us. These are the things that we don't understand, and why do we always feel that way and nobody else feels that way? It's the energy that we're born with. So the birth chart is you. It's unique to you, never to be repeated. It is your first baby picture. I like to have it framed on the wall. It's your first baby picture. But then what happens, and this ties into the chapters of life, we all go through these predictable chapters of life. But what makes every life so beautifully unique is you have the birth chart, chapters of life, but the sky is always changing. So the planets are always moving in the sky, and they're always forming energetic patterns with your birth chart positions, your birth chart energy. So the evolutionary astrologer can explain what you've come into this lifetime with, what your soul is seeking to do in this lifetime, and can explain what is coming. We call them transits. They're geometric angles to the birth chart. What are the transits that you're in now, that are going to be coming in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? On the big ones, I really like to look out. Why this time of life may be particularly challenging to you, and when that energy is going to lift, and what's it going to lift to? What's coming next?
And this is not, as you say, not a prediction. This is
not prediction. It just says, so for example, one of the planets, I always like to talk about Pluto. So Pluto is the furthest out planet in our solar system. It takes 256 years to go around the sun, so it moves pretty slow. And when it forms a position to your birth chart, it stays there for some time. So its impact is quite significant, because Pluto is the planet of transformation. And it's the planet that takes us to the inner psychology, the place of our deep wounds that we don't want to go. But it's seeking to have the soul evolve through that wound energy that you came in with. So I always like to look for, well, what is Pluto doing in the lifetime now, and when's that going to be coming in? And it's always unique to everybody, because it's all tied back to the birth chart. So it's not that I can say this will happen, but I can say this is the energy you'll be encountering. You have free will. You get to make the choice. If I've got Pluto coming into what we call, the 360-degree wheel of the Zodiac chart is comprised of 12 sections we call houses. So the houses are the areas of life that the energy will express through. It will express. 7th house is the house of marriage and partnership. If we have the planet Pluto forming a particular angle to the 7th house, we can anticipate transformation in relationships. I will show that. But it doesn't mean that somebody is going to end a relationship, although it could mean that. But and if it does end, then it was meant to end. That's how Pluto works. Now, if a client knows that Pluto is coming up on their 7th house and they're going through some real difficult times in their partnership, now they understand why they're going through that. And it doesn't mean the partnership will end. It means that you're being called on to transform the way you relate. So instead of, the relationship needs to end and I'm going to up and leave, you've got to understand why you're feeling that way. What else is happening in your chart that's causing that transformational trigger in you? That's a classic one. Things coming up on the 7th house. Let's talk about the 10th house, house of career and profession. So it's interesting. If you're in your 20s, you look at career a certain way. So these are the phases of life. If you're in your 30s, you're looking at it a certain way. If you're in your 60s, you're looking at it in a very different way. You're looking at it as life mission. Very, very different than going to do the corporate job in your 30s and 40s like I did. Now I'm in mission. So when energies are going to influence the 10th house, we want to know about it. We want to know when the good energies are going to come. You know, we're not talking Pluto in terms of total transformation, but if Pluto were coming up on the 10th house, well, that's a perfect time to change careers completely, and you'd be called to do it. Your soul would be called to do it, whether you were in tune with your astrology or not. But Pluto would force that transformation there.
That makes sense. Looking at my life, that makes a lot of sense.
You know, so hopefully that's not too technical, but I have to insist that it's very real. We can see it in the chart. We can understand these energies. And when you know more, you're empowered. The mental machinations stop. And for me, as an evolutionary astrologer, of course, I'm always looking at what's happening with me. And I know when the time is right to do a thing. And I know that I went through a time where it just wasn't right. And I was able to let up on myself. Just let up. Just got to flow with the water.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it feels like a very important, kind of a tool or a side help type thing that,
Extremely powerful.
Yeah. But I was watching a video by Dolores Cannon.
Yes, Dolores.
Right? Yeah, and she was saying that that we were not exactly what you said, right? That the month and the time that we entered the world is actually based on what you are here to achieve, depending on the previous decision, depending on wounds, depending on all of these different things.
Yes, indeed.
It was really interesting. I didn't understand it all. It's probably something that I probably have to go and watch a couple more times to really understand, because yes, astrology has a lot of terms.
a lot of terms, and it's a complex field. It is. And so for our audience, that let's say the younger, the younger 20s, 30s, 40s, life may not have reached you to the point where you're asking these deep philosophical questions of yourself yet, but it will. It will come in your 50s and it will come in your 60s as you enter that spiritual chapter, that third part of your life. I want to call it the half. And it really does all tie back to the birth chart, as you were saying, and what Dolores was saying.
Yeah. So can you give us an example of, one of the Zodiac signs, that what it actually means? Like, for me, I'm a Pisces. My birthday last week.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Well, as a sun Pisces, you seek the ideal. You seek the ideal, and at your core, you're a mystic. And there's a seeking of the meaning of life from a spiritual perspective. You're in tune with everything and everybody. It's like you see the energy that others don't see. You're tied to the other side. The Pisces is tied to the other side more closely than any of the other signs. And so highly intuitive, and the work that you're doing resonates with you as a Pisces sun.
It's funny because I always say, people say, I talk about this, I talk about that. That's what they say. I'm like, I'm not really listening. I'm listening to the energy.
Yes, exactly. Because you can take it in that way. There is, there'll come a time in our humanity, and I think there was in the past a very long time ago, when we didn't speak and we just, thought. Right? And so Pisces is still very much there. It's ruled by water. And Pisces is a servant, but so is Virgo. Virgo is the opposite of Pisces on the wheel. So, these are the two service signs and service houses, if you will. The 12th is the traditional house of Pisces. So, yes, that would be Pisces. You have the energy to seek the ideal in people, and you'll keep
maybe that's why
striving.
If someone is coming for healing and it's not happening straight away, maybe that's why I'm like, oh,
Yes.
what happened? What's wrong? It's not that it's wrong, but things take time, of course. I recognize it, but...
Well, I think that you see it before they do. You see the healing before they do, and so, because, of course, it's a journey for the client.
Yeah,
Right.
always that.
Yeah. And so Aries, so it's interesting. Today is the spring equinox. Happy spring equinox to everybody. 12 hours and 12 hours, sunlight, daylight. It's a powerful energy day. And it is the birthday of the Zodiac. So today is the first day of Aries. So every month, as you know, we have 12 zodiac signs. I think everybody would be comfortable with that. So we have 12 zodiac signs, and somewhere around the 20, 21st, 22nd of every month, we change solar signs. So that means that the sun, not a planet technically, we call it a luminary, but the sun entered the part of the sky that is Aries today. So Aries energy is fire, where Pisces is ruled by water. So immediately on the collective, we feel a different energy. Water is more dreamy, it's more inner. You know, in the water, we're going inward. We're thinking a lot, we're feeling a lot, we're dreaming a lot. This is the Pisces water energy. When we come into Aries, it's like the switch goes on. And everything that we've been thinking about and dreaming about in the past month now has the fuel to come out. You see, it's fire. So Aries is ignition, and it takes bold action. It's also the Robin Hood energy. You know, Aries will seek to help the downtrodden, which is a nice thing. But Aries are very much the leaders. And then after Aries, we have the sign Taurus. So Taurus will come in, let's see, end of April into May. It's always that end gets me. But Taurus is the earth sign. It is earth. And Taurus aligns us with the growing food, shelter, home, security, resources in terms of money, and resources in terms of skill. So the way the zodiac works, it's 12 houses, but Aries starts like, you know, right here. I might be doing it wrong, but it goes like all the way around. So then we've got Taurus down there, and then come June. So we'll say the beginning of June, end of May, beginning of June, we enter Gemini season. Gemini is different than Taurus. This is now an air sign. And so in Gemini, everybody, you know, we all want to go out and socialize and talk. You know, we want to talk, we want to think, we want to write, we want to communicate, we want to do podcasting. It's all like that. And then in July, beginning of July, we come into Cancer season. Cancer is another water sign, and it's ruled by the moon. You know, the moon rules Cancer. And, you know, I'll go back to Gemini for a second. It's ruled by Mercury. So Mercury is the thinking energy. And then we come into Cancer, the moon. So in the moon, in the Cancer season, we tend to want to go inward again because it's water. All right, so whenever it's water, we want to go inward. So we want to go back inward, and we want to spend time at home. We want to be with the family, and we want to be at home. Then we come along and we run into Leo, more fire. And Leo wants to go out and perform. I'm a Leo sun, okay? So you're a Pisces, I'm a Leo. And but Leo wants to get out there and engage with people. It wants to meet people. It wants to have relationships. It wants to have love affairs. You know, this is Leo. Leo is the house of children. And so it wants to create, it wants to draw, it wants to make art, it wants to go out and dance. Then we come into Virgo season, and that'll come just as we're about to enter. Well, it'll come in August, and it'll be there at the beginning of September. So Virgo brings us back to school, because Virgo is the house of daily habits. It's the house of learning, yes, but it's mostly the house of daily habits and discipline. Discipline. Just giving this is very brief, everybody. Then we come along to Libra. And Libra is, the symbol is the scales. It's air. So just like Gemini, beginning of June was air, now we're in Libra, and it's the beginning of October, and everyone wants to go out and socialize again, right? We're coming into the holidays. But Libra seeks harmony and peace and balance. And then we come into Scorpio, more water. And you know, in the northern hemisphere, the winter season is starting to come upon us. But with Scorpio, there's a going really within at a deep psychological level. We're really going to look at what hurts us. I'm going to try to make sense of it in the Scorpio season. And this is on a collective, but again, everybody's chart will greet this energy differently. And so I'll stop here to say why. When you're born and knowing your time of birth, we understand what the zodiac sign was at the beginning of your first house. And the beginning of any house in astrology is called the cusp. And some people might have heard that term. The zodiac sign that's on the beginning of your first house is your rising sign. And so a person could be born with a rising sign of Libra. That means that Libra is in their first house. And so then where Scorpio falls is now coming up in their second house. All right, Libra, Scorpio. So it's coming around. And so what house the zodiac signs land in tell us what arena of life those energies are going to play out in. So it gets very complicated, and this is why you want to work with the evolutionary astrologer, and they'll be able to bring it all to you, and in a way that makes sense, and you can start to use as a foundation for your life. And so after Scorpio, we come into Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is, if you're familiar with Tarot, it's the Fool. You know, it's out on the cliff and it's seeking and it wants to know all and travel the world for the answers. So Sagittarius is fire energy, and it brings us through, comes in right after Thanksgiving, and it brings us in through the jolly time of Christmas season leading up. It's ruled by Jupiter, which I call the Santa Claus planet, big optimism. Then after that comes the sign of Capricorn, and Capricorn, another earth sign, and Capricorn puts us back to work. Puts us back into building. It wants us to build. Then we come around to a sign called Aquarius, where we want to go out and socialize and be with groups of people. And we want to work on our hopes and our dreams. We want to understand those because we're getting ready to come into Pisces solar season, where we're going to go really deep within, and we're going to think about those dreams and those wishes and those organizations that we joined and these new people that we met. And we're going to think about all of that, and we're going to get ready to come into a new season in April of next year at the Aries equinox. It really does, Einav, go around like that, those energies. Now, yes, we all feel the different solar energies on a collective. We do. But how you feel them uniquely to your life is told in your birth chart. And what planets might have landed in those houses, in those zodiac signs at your moment of birth really helps to paint the picture as to, well, let's say you have an Aries sun or an Aries rising. I happen to have an Aries rising. I love this time of year. I mean, I come alive, right? Because that's what the rising sign is all about. I never knew that. I always used to say, wow, April is such a good month for me. But I didn't understand why. So now I understand why, and I understand why when I'm in Pisces season, it's just not such a great month for me. I have to lay low. But knowing that, I'm able to work with that energy and accept it.
Mm. And so can you share an example of a client or someone that you've worked with and helped them to make sense of exactly that, why something doesn't fit and how to change it so it does?
Well, one of my favorites is a client who has the planet Mars in a very interesting position in her chart. So I spoke a little bit about the South Node. A South Node is the South Node of the Moon, it's called. It's a point in the chart that tells us about the past life energy that came in. And the planet Mars is the red planet. It's the planet of aggression. It's the planet that rules Aries, fire, initiatory, warrior energy when we think of Mars, right? And and first working with her, she would say to me, and she came in as a coaching client, she would say to me, I just tick people off. Even with the children, there's an aggression there. There's an aggression there. So her Mars at birth sat right beside her South Node, sat right on top of it, as a matter of fact. We call it a conjunction. And in evolutionary astrology, when we see that setup, we know that when she left the past life, it was pretty aggressive. She may have been killed in battle. In other words, it was that aggressive. Past life, Mars sitting right there. So she comes into this lifetime just fired up, always on guard, right? And so protecting before she had a need to protect. That comes across as aggression. So in working with her, we came up with this great analogy, which we named it Marsy. And so I would say to her, and she'd say, Marsy came out. So she got to understand what was being triggered. And I pointed out that when you have that past life placement, the war, you're still in war. You're still in war mode. But the war has been won. You see, the war has been won. So there's no more need to fight. So because we all have choice. We can feel that coming. And when you know better, to quote Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. She was able to put it in language enough so that when she would feel like that, she would know, oh no, Marcy, you're not going to do that. I had suggested to her, I said, get a sword, get a play sword and put some crystals on it. And, when you feel Marcy, just say, oh no, I'm coming in from a higher level here, Marcy. And so that was just one example, but that was a pretty powerful example because it's helped her quite a bit.
So I have a question, because past life is really, of course, fascinating. And I noticed in my healing that I do, I use the emotion code, body code, and belief code. And sometimes people come to me and I start working with them, and I'm like, either I find it or maybe they, as feedback, we basically realize that this is a past life situation. So here we are clearing all of these things from a past life. And so if I just put it to an example like you just mentioned, so if I was here to clear all of these, fighting energies, mm-hmm. What would that be like for her? Because obviously the charts are, you can't change them, right? It's
right. You can't. It's interesting about clearing. The energy will never go away. It's you. That's the thing. And we don't, in the South Node and that past life energy, will always seek to call her back. It's sort of the devil and the angel. Who's going to win? Mm-hmm. There's always a tug of war between the North Node, what your soul came here to achieve and be and do for humanity, and the South Node. And what is that? The South Node is the comfort. She's more comfortable when she goes to that place of self-protection. So it doesn't go away. There will always be moments in the life that will trigger it, but it becomes less. Mm-hmm. And it becomes less because she understands it and she's able to navigate it and manage it better. Mm-hmm. That's what I find.
Yeah, that's really, for me, it's really fascinating. Because mostly we're working on, the present life, and then sometimes we can ask questions about the past life. We can ask, what is this here to teach us?
Mm-hmm.
How come you're still going through these things, and what have you not mm-hmm. completed in your past life and stuff? But it's very interesting because it's in a very different realm than the one that you're talking about.
It really is, and being a spiritual based astrology field, I'm not surprised that individuals that are being called to a spiritual work come my way, and they're mm-hmm. seeking to know more. And a past life that probably had a person sequestered in a convent or following a religious dogma of somebody else can be seen. So I pointed out the South Node and a Mars planet right next to it. So there's another planet, Jupiter, which I mentioned earlier, right? So Jupiter, if it forms an angle to the South Node that is an opposition or square, so these are frictional angles, then that tells us that there was a blockage from a Jupiter energy. And a Jupiter energy is a powerful individual. It could be a king, it could be the tribe elder, but it's a powerful individual that blocked you from being you, essentially. And when I find these energies coming in from the 12th house, which is the house that is traditionally ruled by Pisces, so it's the house of spirituality and mysticism, or I find Jupiter in Pisces, in the zodiac sign of Pisces, in the 9th house, which is another, the house of my belief systems, and it does rule religion, then there's a spiritual story to the past life, and I'm able to share that as well. The past life story is fascinating, and sometimes a South Node might be there. It's always there, but it might not have, of course, but it might not have difficult energies pointing to it. And that then tells me that, it wasn't so difficult, a bad energy, bad life, but that can be bad too, because then there's nothing to get us off the couch. So we want to evolve our souls. Some charts I see, Einav, there's just a lot of frictional energy, and some I see there's just not a lot. So it's amazing. I did a presentation last night, Know Your Stars, I was mentioning, and I have a slide where I show Oprah's birth chart, and then I show Steve Jobs. I like to show Martha Stewart and Edward Bach, who created the healing remedies, right? All individual people. And you look at the position of their planets and the zodiac signs and the geometric angles that these planets form, and you can see the individual in it. Yeah. It's amazing. Like Oprah's got a grand air trine. So remember how I said air is communication? All things communication. And a trine is harmonious energy. So it's pointing to two other points in her chart. It creates a pyramid, pyramid structure. And it's right up there to her 10th house of career, where her sun sits. So you just, that one jumped out immediately. Even at the attendees to last night's event, they said, whoa, look at that on Oprah's chart. Yeah. So, and she struggled as a young person. Now, if she'd have known that, I think that would have helped her.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? If we could all see that actually the struggles.
And that's my work. I would love to see in schools, in the language that young people can understand, that they see their birth chart. And you don't give it all to them because it's too much, but you give them enough so that they understand how unique they are, how perfect they are already, in that they came here for a mission that only they can do. Just think of what that would do to young people's minds and to humanity if every individual could stand in their own power and then come together. Because when you understand what your own power is, you naturally grow empathy for all of humanity. You're just one pixel in it all, you see? And so if we could teach this to young people early on, I think we could do a lot for all of us.
Yeah, I'm feeling very emotional when you mentioned that. It's like, yes, absolutely.
Right. I mean, how about when I was young, you were young, I mean, we struggled. I used to want to be somebody else. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Well, now I know there's nothing wrong with me. In fact, I'm perfect, just as I am, because that's how God made me. And in my work, I want everybody to know that. And stop the mental machinations. Are we all here healing? Yes, we're all here healing. Because if we didn't have anything to heal, we wouldn't be here. It's just part of the life journey, folks, right? Some have more than others. And there's no, I can't go into that right now, but some have more than others. And so we certainly should have compassion for everybody. Everybody is doing the best they can. Even, if you look at the outer world these days and you think, what crazy's out there, that, by and large, they think they're doing what they should be doing, even though we won't go there.
No. Just briefly, I want to ask about people with chronic conditions and cancers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you also see in the chart?
No, I don't see. Let me qualify that. There is a branch of astrology called medical astrology. Very real branch of astrology. Extremely complex. It's not my branch. So for me personally, no, I don't see it because I haven't studied that. But there are astrologers that do, and there are ancient books. In fact, was it Bach? No, it wasn't Bach, but his name is going to come to me. A book from the 16th, 17th, 18th century that talks all about the tying of the astrology. If we think about it, each zodiac sign that I spoke about rules a certain part of the body. All right? Pisces rules the feet. I have a very dear friend. She's passed on now, and she was Pisces. And things would always be happening with her feet, and she'd just laugh it off because she knew she was Pisces. But Aries rules the head. And so every zodiac sign rules a different part of the body. And just as I said, planets are placed in your birth chart, and depending on where they were and you were born, they're assigned to certain zodiac signs. Now, if that planet has a lot of frictional energy from other areas, medical astrologers can see that there will be an energetic imbalance in the avatar, right? The physical body, because it's all energy. But there'll be an energetic imbalance there. Maybe you'll be prone to a lot of headaches, for example. And so they can see that. And then, so how do we transcend those chronic illnesses, right? We take it to understanding what's the soul lesson and how to transcend those frictional energies that came in. There really is a language with that, Einav, in the evolutionary astrology. Mm-hmm. And so I don't see it personally. I don't look for it. It's a very specialized branch, and that's a place that I think you've got to be really ready to take on with something like that. But chronic illness, I'm a metaphysician, as you said, so I know everything is energy. And chronic illness is energy disharmony. And how do we solve the disharmony? We have to understand what caused it. And understanding the placement of the planets and the energy in the chart can show you that. It can show you that. Now, because this is your work, that we've got to calm that disharmony down. We've got to work with it. We've got to call it out. We've got to understand it. And until we're willing to, this is a big part of it, take responsibility for the healing of it by working with the wounds, which is causing the disharmony, then the illness will not go away. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see it, like I said before, at some point. Yeah, I mean, when I work with people, now I already know, probably at the beginning when we have this first connection call, I already kind of know if they're going to be, if they are ready to be healed. They are healing themselves, of course, but are they ready to do the healing or not?
Right.
And that's very, it has taken me a while to say, actually, if you're not ready, then I'm not ready.
Yes. And that's really hard for a healer to do because you're called into service to heal. But, sometimes people just aren't ready, and they won't be ready in this entire lifetime because, there's something that's pulling them back. So, we can think about that South Node, right? What's that comfort zone that you like being comfortable in, that you're willing to risk the quality of life for?
Yeah, and this is, of course, no question that we can ask, because if you, if you suggest that it's a choice, then it's a very offensive choice, right? And then people really get very triggered. But
Right.
Yeah, if I ever get in a situation like this again, I really, I've made a lot of learnings from all of these areas. So I want to actually jump off from the chronic conditions for a moment, and I want to talk about metaphysics. Now, I know that we are kind of getting to the point where we're running out of time.
Oh,
but
wow, it went by so fast.
I know. But I want, because we use metaphysics a lot, but I know that some people won't really understand it. So what is it?
Well, meta is is large. It's everything. It's everywhere. Meta, big. And physics is that which we can't see. It's that which we can't see, which we can't hold. So it is, in a lot of ways, it's a belief system, isn't it? Right? That there's something more. There's something much more than any physical thing we could hold, or our physical body. And that's what it is to me. That's what it is to me. It's just, it goes beyond the physical state of anything. It's everlasting. It is from which we come, and it is from which we go to. It's our, it's like our soul. Our soul is centered really at our heart chakra, I believe. And when we pass, I've not seen it, although I've been with people that have passed, and that's pretty amazing. But there's a puff of smoke that comes, just a puff, and it's the energy releasing out of the physical body. And so, metaphysics is a branch of philosophy. It's a branch of belief that says there's much more than the physical life, and we don't know what all of it is, and it keeps unfolding. And as a metaphysician, we're always seeking to understand and know more about it.
And are you using that in the work that you do with people?
I absolutely do. I use it in all of my work because it forms the core of who I am. I entered the University of Metaphysics for me. I hadn't had any idea that I'd be doing what I was doing right now. And I entered it for me. I was always a philosopher, always a seeker, always wanted to know the hidden truths of why I'm here, simply why I'm here. And all those great words. But because I really wanted to know it and understand it, and I do. I know it, I understand it. I keep getting deeper with it, but it's my essence. And so, yes, I use it in my work because it comes out. It forms my astrology analysis. So when a client signs on for an hour and a half long consultation, I spend some good time analyzing the chart. And that's me. That's my energy, and everything that I know about the truth is analyzing that chart. And when I work with clients in my program called Live Your Blueprint, which is, okay, now let's take that and let's journey together over the coming months, and let's bring this into life and really absorb who you are, and let's see what you're going to do with that, or what you would like to do with that in your life, and let's get into action and make that happen, right? Well, throughout all of that is my knowledge of the vastness of it all, the truth of it all. Everything is energy. And so I'm able to go beyond the heaviness of a world that tells us everything we're not. Right? I don't play in that world.
Yeah. Well, it sounds very, very, very inviting and very like a lot of very curious kind of a lot of discoveries to be made on this
Lot of
journey.
discoveries. It's who we become on the journey always, right? And so in my larger program, Live Your Blueprint, we start with writing your current story. Where are you at? Where are you at? And I interview the client and I write it. And I like to keep it on one page, very simple. And I wordsmith it for some time, and I don't use AI for that. Okay, it's coming from me. This is me. Mm-hmm. And I'm tuned into what you're feeling and where you're at in life, what you think is holding you back. And in there, invariably comes the vision of who you are. You have that vision. We all have that vision. Mm-hmm. And I bring that to the client, and the client likes it, changes it, and we put that away. Then we go into a couple of things. We spend a couple of sessions and know your stars, your astrology, evolutionary astrology. We're spending considerable time in that space. And then I bring in, and this works especially well for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s that are still building career, Clifton StrengthsFinder, which is a personality assessment. I'm a certified StrengthsFinder coach, but it allows me to bring the stars down to earth. Let's put it into real world language. Mm-hmm. You're writing a bio, you're writing a resume. Let's understand what your strengths are. I can see them in your chart too, but let's give you the reports in the language that you can start to absorb. And with that, we then move on to writing the history of your 10-year future. And this is interesting for clients. Some struggle and some don't. But it goes like this: if you have a destination, you're getting in your car and go somewhere, you type the destination into your phone. It needs to know where you're going before it can tell you how to get there, right? So let's talk about where you're going. Mm-hmm. Let's write that out, and we get a version 1. We keep working. We get a version 2. And from that, what starts to come out, now what's interesting, Einav, is because you and I did corporate, right? I was a senior program manager. So project management, software development, program manager, I just naturally gravitate. My mind organizes everything. And so I can look at the 10-year future and start to organize it into goals, a project plan. And I have stadium goals and spotlight goals. We have great terminology for it. But then the client has this is where I am. Now, after we finalize the story, your 10-year future, I open back up the starting story, which has all been forgotten by now, right? Mm. And invariably, we see the footprint of what came out in the 10-year history. So we see it. So that validates and validates. Then we get into action and we make it happen. And my program is currently 9 sessions, and it can run 6-7 months long. I mean, I'm not rushing anybody because it really is who you become in the journey. And I'm thinking of extending it to a full year-long journey because it does take that long for the change. But what's happening every time I meet with the client is we're looking at what's happening in the sky today. What's Pluto up to in your chart? What's Neptune, the next slowest planet, up to in your chart? In other words, what energies are you meeting in this chapter of your life? Mm. And let's fold that into the story. And by the way, 2 years from now, Uranus is going to cross over your rising sign, and you are going to really come out as your individual, unique self. That's just that energy. That happens to everybody in their lifetime, different stages, depending on where Uranus was when you were born. Happened to me in my early 40s, and I didn't know that was happening, but oh yeah, it came true, So that's the full journey. It's extremely powerful. And, to me, it is life establishing. And I'll tell you why. It puts your feet in a spot, and it says, I learned in that year, in that 6 months, I learned all of this about myself. No one can ever take that away from me. I know myself better now than I could have ever known being in a therapy session for 10 years, talking about what my pain is, right? So I know myself more, and I know what I want to be. I know what I want to be, do, have, all those great things, but I have a vision of myself. And I always remind the clients, if you have a vision, it's attainable, because that vision came from your higher consciousness, which is Creator, which is God. It didn't, you did not put that vision there. See, we think the ego created the vision. It did not. The vision came from higher. And in the vision always ties to the North Node, Einav. Always. So every time I work with a client in this full program, I'm blown away, because I can see, and I can point out, look, you're on your way. Oh, okay, fine. You've got a Marsie over there, and you got a difficult Pluto, but you've got a great Jupiter. Let's play to that. My metaphysical teacher, he always interesting. He's passed on now, but he took up astrology back in the 60s and 70s, and he wasn't really a fan of it at first, and after some 2,000 readings, he became a believer. It's uncanny what you can see. And even he said, if only parents could know this about their children. Here's a blueprint. Here's a blueprint of what your child is going to need in this lifetime, emotionally, and what they're going to seek to do as an ultimate service to humanity. Because that's what it is. We can have corporate jobs, and we must have them. Even in my corporate job, though, I was doing what I'm called to do, which was I was always mentoring people. I loved working with the teams. That's what kept me going. Not the executives that, I don't know what they do, but, working with the teams and one-on-one mentoring. And it was always my goal that everybody should feel fulfilled in their job. Otherwise, I haven't placed them properly. There's the right spots for everybody, and we need managers to recognize that. So thank you for listening to all of that.
No, it's fascinating. I'm like, and this one, and this one, and this one. I'm thinking about all the people I know, and all the questions I have, and all the the things, like you say, right? Parents should be advised how to help their children, and I'm thinking about my daughters and where they are in life at the moment, and I'm like, yes. Please tell me.
Yes. And what's so interesting is family astrology. So this was a little bit fun. Not fun in a off. Just as an aside. I'll take the word fun back, but it was very interesting. So this particular client with a son and a daughter, and just wanted to understand what their energy was. And so we were able to look at that, and we were able to, and look at, there's a way you build what's called a composite chart, and you can see how things might trigger other things or how things might support other things. And then it's right? Like when you know better, you do better, right?
When they say, you don't get a manual for parenthood, this is a manual. It sounds like it really is.
You don't. I am the fourth of 9 children. And I remember my mom saying, I don't understand. You all came out of the same kitchen. How can you be so different? And we were. The poor, I don't know how she survived.
So is it true that if you, say you and one of your siblings were born on the same date but a different year, would you be similar in characteristics or very different?
That's interesting. They call it the birthday, the month and the day. There are similar characteristics. There really are. So I'm a July 29, and there's a book called The Birthday Book. And so, years ago, one of my sisters had it, and we're looking at it, and I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds like me, and then my other sister is this, well, that sounds like you. But, and I think it has a lot to do with the solar placement, certainly, but it's all about the energy in the sky, and particularly the solar, and it's got to be some other things, but it's uncanny how there is value there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jenny, I think we could have probably, continued this conversation
We
for a few
could
more
have.
hours or days, But maybe before we say goodbye, what is a message that you want people to take away from today's conversation?
You're perfect already. You're perfect already. Don't let anybody tell you anything different. And seek to find out what your energy is so that you understand it, so that then you're better able to move toward what the soul is seeking to do in this lifetime. And you'll be happier.
I love it. Move towards. That's so simple. Just
I'm
move
always
towards.
about moving towards. That's what life is. We're happier in movement.
Yeah, right. But how often do we move forward with sticks in our wheels, right? It's
Yeah. Well, I know it all sounds great. Life is not easy, but even that becomes a choice. There's that word again. Another great mom saying. She said to me, Jeannie, your life is what you make it. And she was a metaphysician before her time. I don't think she understood the power of those words.
yeah. Well,
Cool.
with this,
Thank you so
with this
much.
wisdom,
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you very much for sharing not all, but some of your wisdom with us. Really enjoyed our conversation. Thank
Same
you.
here.
And all of your social links and all of your bio and everything will be at the show notes of this, wherever people
Wonderful.
either watch or listen, so they can always find out more about you and get in touch and all of that. And for those listening or watching, please do like, comment, subscribe, do all of that stuff so that we can keep on, bringing really fascinating content to the world. The world is definitely needing this kind of
Yes,
thing
it
right now.
is. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jenny, for being here with us
God
today.
bless. Thank you.
Thank you.